What's up, y'all? It's Samson here for another episode and another season of The Fitting Room. And right now, we are in the summer season. So, thank y'all so much for tuning in. We're shouting out TCC, TU, and ORU. What's up, y'all? I got another story for y'all, and I'm super excited about this one. And I would love to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Austin. What's up, Austin? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am currently a student at Tulsa Community College. I am taking a digital media degree specializing in broadcast production, and it's my first year at Tulsa Community College, but because I am finishing a degree, it's kind of like my second year in terms of what I'm taking and whatnot. So,
Yup. That's what's up. That's what's up. Thank you so much for being willing to hop on and being willing to share your story. It is greatly appreciated. And I know there's going to be people out there who are going to be encouraged by it. And so, without further ado, tell us, man, how did you get here?
I would say largely it was from religion, church, faith. I suppose to know somewhat where I came from, I would need to tell just a little bit about my dad. So when he was growing up, his dad, my grandfather, was that side of the family was Pentecostal. And then my grandma, his mom, her side of the family was Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So there was kind of a tension there between the two families, very different in terms of beliefs and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so whether they were practicing or not, it didn't matter. The two families were kind of at odds. And so that's something my dad grew up with. And something that stuck out to him, though, was the faith of his grandmother and his aunts.
Yeah.
And so even though he wasn't perhaps always into it, that's something that stuck out to him. And so I'm not sure if there was an exact moment, but there was a time where my dad felt like he couldn't ignore it any longer. And so he started studying the Bible for himself.
Yeah.
And so specifically because he came from a Pentecostal background, it was studying tongues and whatnot. And so fast forward, he met my mom, and eventually my brother and I were brought into the world, and he brought us along. And so the way that he would say is that, name it, and we tried it.
Yeah.
And so it was church hopping, and I was just along for the ride. I can't say that I was
Yeah.
ever invested in it, I suppose.
Yeah, so just so I'm following, so your dad is kind of going on this journey of trying to, I guess in a sense, find faith or trying to find what he believes,
Mm-hmm.
and then on this way he meets mom,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who marries and invites her into this journey, has kids, invite them into this journey, and so you guys are kind of like in this car ride of this adventure that your dad's going on.
Yes.
Okay, no, solid.
And so I suppose that was my life growing up, was just wherever dad was interested in, I suppose, in terms of doctrines or beliefs, that's where we went.
Yeah.
And so I suppose a pivot point was in 2008, he had a triple bypass heart attack.
Oh man.
And so he was given, if I remember correctly, a 10% chance
Yeah.
of survival. It was pretty low. And so he has always told me that, like, while he was in the hospital, he prayed, saying, you know, God, just get me through this and I'll follow, you know, wherever you lead. And so miraculously, after a week of being in the hospital, he made a recovery, and he kept his word. And so he kind of continued his normal study habits, but eventually my uncle called him and asked, have you heard of the Seventh-day Sabbath?
Yeah.
And so my dad hadn't really studied too much into it, so we found a local Seventh-day Adventist church. This would have been Yukon, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's a church there anymore because I think they moved to a bigger building. But even so, we started going there. He started studying their beliefs. And there was some church hopping too with that, where we went to Oklahoma City to a couple prophecy seminars and whatnot. And so this was somewhat different in terms of, well, a lot different in various beliefs. And we had always gone to church on Sunday, so it was quite of a adjustment.
Yeah, and that's partly what I'm thinking about when I hear this journey. It's like, now that your dad is kind of moving forward into this, I guess, church space, it's like, okay, I found a church that I really want to lean into. I'm curious to know how you guys dealt with it as the children, and how your mom, his wife, dealt with it. Was it kind of like a smooth transition, or was it kind of like rough breaks trying to stop?
There were areas that were simple. So, for example, an Adventist teaching is pork is not considered a clean meat. And so something of that nature, it was fairly simple for us to kind of get off of, which was kind of...
Get off the bacon?
Yeah, get off the bacon.
I know for some people that's not easy.
Yeah.
So it's like...
I don't know why it was, like... I don't know. It's just somehow it just was natural.
Too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I suppose maybe there were other things. I know my mom was, at times, I think she thought my dad was crazy at times. Just because it was so different from what she had been used to. She was raised Baptist, and so it was a little different.
Yeah,
And
no,
so,
I can imagine. Okay, so your dad founds his church. He's moving in. He's going all out. You guys are with it. Some parts are easy. Some parts are difficult. So how does this continue to develop?
We went to 2 or 3 different prophecy seminars before... I say as a family, but it was my dad making the decision, and we followed along. So it was until finally we got baptized as a family, and this was in 2009. So pretty short time from when he had the heart attack until we got baptized into the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
And all of you guys got baptized at the same time?
Yes.
Oh, man, that's amazing. That is amazing. You don't hear that a lot, where like the entire family at one time gets baptized. It's a beautiful, beautiful reality. But keep going, sorry.
Well, from there, we kind of got into it. There's the Pathfinder program that the church has. I got into that.
And explain that. What is that?
It is I guess, to put it simply, it's a youth program that mimics Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. So
Okay.
there is an emphasis on the Bible, but they will go out camping, earn
Yeah.
honors, stuff like that. And so that was different, but it was, I think, a welcome change.
Yeah.
And so, additionally, we just got involved in other areas. It was something that I wouldn't say I was invested still, but it was something that intrigued me more because some things were being undone that I'd learned before. So,
Mm.
for example, the hell doctrine is
Yeah.
very different, but it was something that I found a little bit more comfort in compared to before.
Yeah.
But we kind of just stuck with that for a while. And I guess, as I said before, like religion and church guided me. So it guided me into Pathfinders. It guided
Mm-hmm.
me into. Eventually, I would go to work at an Adventist summer camp where
Yeah.
I met my eventual Adventist wife.
Yeah.
At the time, she wasn't super into me, but
Hey. Hey.
but but also, I would say around like 16 or 17, I started perhaps realizing that I didn't bring myself here. It was my
Mm.
dad. And
Yeah.
so, in a way, I kind of started, I suppose, drifting away from faith for a time.
Mm.
I, not to say I went crazy or anything, it's just
Yeah.
like I kind of just stopped going, kind of started just doing my own thing. When I was in community college for a time then, dabbled a little bit in alcohol and marijuana.
Yeah.
There was pornography in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a time where I guess I was tired of following the family way, I suppose, in a
Mm.
way. And I was like, it's my time now.
Yeah.
But that wasn't lasting.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you sharing this because like as I'm listening, I'm hearing your dad kind of going on this journey and bringing along the family and it's kind of like this beautiful moment and I think it really was a beautiful moment still. And there's another reality of you kind of going on that journey yourself and I think when it comes to especially the college space, there's a lot of people who are trying to figure out that journey for
Mm-hmm.
themselves, who are trying to figure out um, almost like, hey, what my mom and dad, what they think, what they believe, how I grew up, the community I was surrounded in, is this the community for me? Is
Mm-hmm.
this what resonates with me? And so the fact that you are willing to like express, hey, I went through a period where I just started kind of trying to find my own way. I think it's the same thing that your dad went through in trying to navigate his own space. So I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you sharing that because I know that there are a lot of people who can connect with that, who feel that a lot. And so I appreciate you for sharing that.
Yeah, that continued for a time, not very long, but eventually, I suppose, like my dad, it was something that I felt I couldn't ignore any longer. Like there was something that I felt was missing. And
Yeah.
so I started slowly getting back into church, slowly praying on my own, studying on my own.
Yeah. Was there a certain point, or is there something specific that maybe happened that triggered that, or was it kind of like slowly coming to the realization?
I think a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was probably that feeling all along,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a specific moment where it was a Halloween party, so people are dressed up.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I got invited by my coworker at the time, and there was drinking involved and whatnot. At the time, like in the early hours, I suppose it was a fun time.
Yeah.
I stayed a little too long, and then there are those who are really like they need to lay down, kind of. And
Yeah.
so I think there was just in that moment there was a girl. She was, again heavily drunk, and she was trying to come on to me a little bit, and I was like, I gotta get out of here. Um, and
Yep.
so I think after that, I was just like, what am I doing? It just felt all wrong, and I just felt like I was not in the right place.
Yeah.
And I think that was a triggering moment, like where I had the feeling, but that tipped me over into acting.
Yeah. So what was one of the first kind of steps that you took after that moment?
Hmm.
Was it like you get on the phone, look for the nearest church? Is it you call a friend? Like what was kind of like the next step that you took after that?
After that, it was my parents were now going to an Adventist church in Moore,
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma. And I just kind of would go with them every so often. I started specifically speaking with a pastor there,
Yeah.
and kind of just talking with him every so often about what I was going through at the time.
Yeah.
But eventually there was still this feeling of I need to find God for myself. I was
Mm-hmm.
still living under my parents' roof. And so while I was interested, there was a moment where I got the opportunity to move to Tennessee. I was
Mm-hmm.
going to be living with my aunt and uncle, but it was still separated, kind of on my own.
Yeah.
And so for some reason, I thought, this is God leading.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe it was God leading. So I moved to Tennessee, and that's where I really started finding God for myself. Like understanding God, not from my dad's point of view, I suppose.
Yeah.
Not that his point of view is wrong. I suppose we all have different views of God, but it was a new opportunity for me to see God as best as I can as he wants to see me.
Yeah.
And so
No, that's really cool, and it's really cool too because it almost sounds like by leaving home, you went on this journey of trying to find faith or what it is that you believe, whether you knew it or not.
mhm. Yeah. So while I was there, I definitely felt my faith growing. And so I read, like, it was the first time I had read the Bible through,
Mm-hmm.
all the way through. I ended up doing Bible studies with a church there and ended up getting rebaptized
Hey.
for myself. That was 2017. And so there were a lot of, I suppose it's kind of like when some young adults go to college, like it's like this discovering yourself
Mm-hmm.
experience. And I suppose that was somewhat of what I was experiencing when I moved to Tennessee. And I was both learning and discovering who I was,
Yeah.
but then also additionally I was learning and discovering who God was during
Mm-hmm.
that time. So a lot happened while I was there. I got involved again with church there. Met a good group of friends, and friends that really strengthened my faith as well.
Yeah.
And life was pretty good. And then COVID happened and everyone was separated.
Yep.
And so, not that it fell apart or anything, but I do think COVID kind of caused some rethinking, I suppose. Like, am I here just for the people, I suppose,
Mm.
or am I here for God, I suppose?
Yeah.
So even though in a way there was a new disconnect with those people and the life that had been kind of built up over those few years, I ended up beginning a conversation with a girl who luckily somehow she kept talking to me, but who would eventually become my wife.
Hey, woo woo.
So something, even though there were a lot of negatives perhaps at that time, I somehow, by the grace of God, got a positive. And so,
Yeah. And I know that for a lot of people, even though we're several years past the whole COVID experience, I know that there are some things for some people that were just like left back there, and it's can be discouraging. Some things may be encouraging that they're left back there. Um, but as I'm hearing you talk, it almost sounds like some things, even though came out of there and it's positive, it sounds like
mm-hmm.
there were some things that were left back there.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is some of the things that are left back there that you?
I suppose there were people, like it was a very divisive time. So I think in some ways, not that I wanted it or tried to push people away, people just kind of were gone. It wasn't like anyone was at fault. But additionally, I think during that time when I was speaking with my wife, we were talking about like the church family that we wanted to be a part of, I suppose, like
Yeah.
ones that strengthen our faith. And I think during that time, it was also the church I was at. While I appreciated it before, I started wondering, like, was it uplifting me as much as I would like, I suppose, like in terms of strengthening my faith or getting closer to God. Like, was it? And so just various questionings during that time kind of made me move forward and leave some stuff behind.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's good to hear. That's good to hear that that even though there were some things that were difficult to leave behind, that through reflection and through your journey, you're able to leave them and to kind of look forward to what's ahead. Okay, so you can continue.
Well, eventually, I suppose there might be a little bit of details that might be a bit much, but I suppose it could be my wife. She moved to Tennessee to be
Mm-hmm.
closer. We got engaged, got married there, and I think within 6 months or so, we moved here to Tulsa. And
Yep.
so I was all for it, but I definitely think it's been a struggle to acclimate to this new environment. Uh, it definitely feels like in some ways I've regressed. And I don't know, it's not necessarily, I suppose I linked a lot of the stuff in my past to this place. And so when I moved
Mm,
back here, it kind of felt like I'm back where I was. And so in some ways, it's been a struggle to keep the faith while I've been here, because
yeah.
a lot of memories and baggage, I suppose, are linked to this place, and trying to remember it's not this place in particular or anything, but
Yep.
it's definitely been something where I've gotten frustrated when I think certain thoughts or say certain things, and I'm like, why am I would have never said this before,
Yeah.
like when I was in Tennessee, but for some reason, uh, I don't know, I'm just kind of here trying to
Yeah.
figure it out.
I definitely I appreciate you sharing this because I think there's a lot of people who maybe had the expectation that they were going to travel somewhere for school, whether it's leave the state, go across state, and maybe they did go there for a year, but then now they have to come back. Now they have to maybe take go to community college, take some classes back in the environment they were in before, and that can seem very discouraging to feel like you advanced when you're in one place and then you're brought back to another place and you feel the almost the weight of what was before.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you're here in this spot now and you're in this environment, what would you say are maybe some of the blessings that you've seen, but also some of the challenges that you have faced being now in this time frame?
I suppose it is both a challenge and a blessing. With my wife had an established friend group and family here,
Yeah.
and I would say it's both been a challenge and a blessing to integrate with them. They are very, I would say they are a positive influence,
Mm-hmm.
but I suppose I feel like an outsider. Like we kind of came back to what she had established before, and I'm trying to work my way in somehow. And there
No,
are
that's
days where I'm
true.
like, it's working, and then other days I'm like,
It ain't.
it ain't working.
No, no, that's real. And it's interesting because as I'm hearing you, it's like when you were in Tennessee, you had that space. She came out to Tennessee, so she got maybe a taste of that space,
Hmm.
and then y'all come back to Tulsa, and she's in her space, and
Hmm.
you're like, oh man, I miss my space, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's just
Yeah.
interesting.
And I don't know. I suppose here I I think there's just been a lot of growing up.
Hmm.
Like over in Tennessee, yes, things were good, but I do think it was all on my terms. It
Yeah,
was what I would consider easy, I suppose. And so, even though I was completely leaving everything that I knew
hmm,
in Oklahoma and moving to Tennessee, it was easier transitioning because it was something that I do think God was leading me there,
yeah,
but also it was something that I was okay with. But I suppose coming back to Oklahoma was almost like my Jonah experience. Like Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh. Um, Not comparing Oklahoma to Nineveh, but um, it was and is a challenge to be someplace that was not in my 5-year plan,
yeah.
kind of thing. So I suppose I'm just day to day working it out.
Man. So, I think back to kind of how this conversation started um, with your dad, kind of going on this journey of finding faith, finding what he believes, and seeing that transfer to you in your journey, finding faith, finding what you believe, and a lot of that happening in Tennessee. And it even almost sounds like you found something in Tennessee on that journey, and now coming back to Tulsa. Do you sense that you almost have to do you sense that you've lost something in for going from Tennessee over to Tulsa, that you have to go on another search for it again, or do you feel like maybe you've brought what you've learned from Tennessee and you're trying to redefine it or see how it fits in this space? Like I'm curious to know what journey you sense that you're currently on while being here in Tulsa, if that makes sense.
I suppose there are some redefining uh, concepts within my journey.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, particularly not when I was in Tennessee, I felt like I was willing to do more for church ministry
Mm-hmm.
or for like where I worked. I felt like very patient.
Yeah.
And then moving to Tulsa, I feel like I'm having to relearn patience and relearn how to give my time toward volunteering in church ministry and
Yeah.
whatnot. Because, again, I suppose in some ways it was easy in Tennessee because I volunteered for what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But here I feel like there's been a lot of volunteering just because I need to do something.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that eventually it'll turn out to be something that I needed and not just
Yeah.
something that I'm doing. But
No, I definitely feel that. Okay. And so when it comes to, because right now you're at TCC,
mm-hmm.
what do you see as like the correlation between kind of the space that you're in now, faith, religion, but also going to TCC, taking classes, and kind of moving forward in that space? Or maybe there's not a connection and you just.
Well, I do think that since I moved with my wife to Tulsa, there were a lot of times where I felt aimless or lost. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, when we finally decided that maybe I should go back to school, everything has seemed to work out.
Mm.
And so in some ways there was a leap of faith when I went to Tennessee,
Yeah.
and I feel as though this too has been a leap of faith. Like, I don't know what's gonna come from this. I don't know if anything will come from this, but just I'm here waiting on God.
No, that's real.
So
Do you sense that that's producing within you like an excitement or like a fire, almost like it was in Tennessee, or do you sense some similar? Because you referred back to Tennessee, so I'm wondering how correlated are these experiences?
I think it'll be interesting to see, because even when I was in Tennessee, there was something where I knew I wanted to do something more educationally or to improve career prospects,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing really worked out there.
Yeah.
And so I guess it'll be interesting to see the place that I left because I didn't think there was anything here for me. I come back and things are working toward that educational goal. A place that I didn't think had anything for me.
Hmm.
But
It almost seems like going to Tennessee assisted you when it came to finding faith, and then coming to Tulsa sounds like it's assisting you when it comes to finding calling.
I would say so.
Well, I don't know. I'm just. This is kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Because I know for when I was in Tennessee, it was kind of looking at it anywhere to see, like, what could I do? What could I do? And even a little bit when I first came to Tulsa, I was like, what can I do? And now that I'm in the broadcast production space, I think it makes sense
Mm-hmm.
in terms of I've always liked writing, and that's something that is heavily emphasized within the degree plan.
Yeah.
I've liked creating things in terms of drawing, video, that is something that is prevalent in this degree plan. And so it just seems like something, like, I don't know why I didn't do it sooner kind of thing. Uh,
No, I feel
but
that. I feel that. No, that's what's up. Okay, so when it comes to, I guess, looking forward into the future, like where do you see yourself down the line of time? Whether it's graduation, next 10, 15 years, when you're 80, where do you see yourself in the future?
I have a lot coming up. So there's, if everything works out, which everything seems to be, but if everything works out, in theory, I would be graduating this December.
Hey,
And then I'll graduate, and my wife will be ripe for bringing a baby into the world right
that's
out
what's
about that
up.
time.
That's
So,
what's up. Congratulations on that.
yeah, that's a lot too.
That's exciting, man. That's
But
exciting.
I suppose with all of the unknowns, I simply see myself waiting on God,
Yeah.
because I don't know. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah. No, 100%. And it almost seems like a lot of your future thought process is wrapped up in getting to graduation and this child.
hmm Beyond that, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, no, I mean for real. Um, what's nice is after you're done with school, then you have a child. I mean, going to school and having a child, like starting, which I'm sure
hmm
there's a lot of people out there who are in the middle of school and got a baby and they're navigating it. Shout out to y'all. Shout out to y'all. Um, but it sounds like it's a good timing.
Yeah.
That way, when you're done, you can focus your attention in that area.
Yeah, I'll get one accomplishment and then immediately have another accomplishment. So,
That's the one. So, um, when it comes to your degree, is there anything that you wanted to do with it, or areas that you would be interested to dabble in?
I think preferably, if I could work in some ministry, that would be something, knowing that I'm working towards something good, I
Yeah.
suppose. Um, there are, in particular, I'm working on interviewing people for their testimonies,
Mm-hmm.
and that is something. There are a lot of stories that I would like to hear, and so, but I suppose there's not a specific route, but I know I'll get somewhere.
Oh
So,
no, 100%. And this is just a thought that popped in my head, but it almost seems like even when it comes to connecting with people, hearing their stories and testimonies, it sounds like a lot of it goes back to a combination between your dad's journey and your journey of really a journey of finding faith, finding out what you believe,
mhm.
leaning into that. And so it sounds like part of what you want to do is figure out a way to display these experiences and stories and to share that with
Mhm.
the world.
Yeah, definitely thinking about the generational testimony that
Mm-hmm.
is first my dad and then it was passed down to me, just made me think about, man, there's so many other stories out there, whether it's just individual or there's third, fourth, fifth generation
Yeah.
believers, um, or even just non-believers. Like, there are people with stories out there
Yeah.
that are inspirational and what people need to hear.
I know, 100%, man. And you know what's cool is, I mean, that's what this podcast is about, right? The fitting room is the idea of allowing students in Tulsa to share their stories and their experiences so that people don't feel alone, so that people know that they're not the only one that's going through certain things. And so even though it's not necessarily a religious podcast, it still has a tone of hearing the stories. And so I'm assuming that might even be what led you to be willing to be on
Yeah.
for an episode. I'll share my story. And so that's super cool. Okay, so for someone who is maybe in a space of wanting to share their story, right, or wanting to navigate that lane of how do I share my story? How do I talk about my journey of finding faith? How do I do that? What advice would you give to that person, and what encouragement would you give to that person being an individual who's all about stories?
I suppose there is a class or a program that I'm taking right now that is going through storytelling techniques. And one thing that they begin with is what if questions. I would say perhaps look at your life and ask, what if this hadn't gone this way? And I do think after you do that for various parts of your life, you'll realize how much God has led, whether you've known it or not. And so that's what I would say.
No, that's solid. That's solid. And I like that too, because, you know, even some of the challenges that we've experienced in our life, even though it would be nice to wipe that out, asking ourselves a question, well, what would have happened if that was wiped out? Sure, life would maybe have looked cleaned, but what about all the, I guess you can say, fruit that came from it, or the positive things that came from it? And so, no, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for hopping on here. Thank you for sharing your story.
Of course.
And I know that people are going to be encouraged by it, very much so. And thank y'all for tuning in, for being willing to listen to Austin and his story. And if you would like to share your story on The Fitting Room, we would love to have you. And so feel free to fill out the Google form. Feel free to connect on Instagram. Shout out to all those that have been following on Instagram. Love y'all. Shout out. Big love. And we look forward to having you on. Just like Austin, you can share your story, and we'd love to hear it. And so until then, thank you so much for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And until then, I hope that you see how you fit in the fitting room. Peace.